So, and what this is about what is real, okay, and what is not real, and how artists present reality, and how we can create our own reality. And it's also about Wilson Street, okay? So, this is a picture of a very famous picture by an artist called Duchamp. And what it says, those of you who speak French fluently, like Jack, will know that it says in French, this is not a pipe. Because it's not a pipe, it's an image of a pipe. So it ain't real, okay? And often it's worth thinking about when people make images or make pictures, what's real and what isn't. And I'm really interested in what is real and what isn't. So much so that I'm going to talk about this. I'm very brave. This rock, on it, it says, what does it say, Jack?
Disbelief.
Disbelief. And it's a reference to something where if you go to the theatre and you go and see a show, or you go to the cinema and you go and see a film, what you actually do is all the audience go to the theatre, all the audience go to the film, and they get involved in what's going on in the film, and they forget it's a film, or they get involved in what's on the stage. And it isn't real, but they get pulled into it, they forget it in a theatre. And the expression we use to describe that is suspension of disbelief. And the pipe's not real, it's an image of a pipe. But then it gets confusing, because this is a rock, and it's kind of floating, which it shouldn't be. And so it's an illusion, but it's also real. Come and touch. Come on, Tom. See, it is real. Yeah?
Ready, do you want to touch it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a real, but it's not real. So it's kind of an illusion, and you think it's really, really heavy. It's not really heavy, and I don't mind sitting underneath it, but if it fell on my head, it would hurt. Okay? Now, I got very interested in this idea. What is real, what's not real? What is real, what's not real? And I'm really into surfing. Some of you know, I do a lot of surfing. And when I was in France, I met a guy who told me about a wave that runs up the River Severn near Bristol. And the River Severn is quite a wide river, and it's got a very high tidal range, which means that when the tide comes in, it goes really, really high. And there is a wave that runs up it called the Severn Bore. And I was totally fascinated by the idea of surfing the Severn Bore. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. It is quite phenomenal. And I went to find it, and I surfed it. Thanks. And it's amazing because you surf up the Severn Bore, and as you go up, you're going past trees, past cows, underneath railway bridges, underneath some road bridges, and as you go up, the fishermen are all there, and they see you coming, and they bring in another fishing line so you don't get caught up in them. And it's the most incredible, surreal experience. And so I decided to develop a religion about people dreaming the impossible, thinking of doing something you couldn't imagine possibly doing, like surfing up a river. But I would base it around surfing. I called it performance surfing. And the catechism, the words that describe what we believed in, was all is myth, and when two people gather together to share a myth, the myth becomes reality. It's the idea of you and I agree we're going to do something really, really spectacular, really special, maybe almost impossible, and we're going to do it, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about in a moment. Actually, I did something which you will never believe, and I'm going to demonstrate that I did it, okay? I was very inspired by an artist called Christo. And Christo is famous for wrapping things. He wraps buildings, he wraps trees, he wraps, he went to Australia and he wrapped the coast for 36 miles. He went to Times Square and he kind of wrapped Times Square by creating these arches of cloth all the way around Times Square in New York. And so I'm really interested in the idea of wrapping, but also I was also interested in another artist called Manzoni. Manzoni was probably the first conceptual artist, which I'll explain in a minute. And he thought, he didn't like the art world. He didn't like people, like the way galleries worked. So he decided to take the mickey out of them. He would can his own poo. And then he sold them. And so as an edition of 90, he sold them. And he sold the first one for $36 in New York, which is the same weight and cost of gold. So for that weight of a can, whatever that weighed, if it was gold, it would have cost $36. And they continue to be sold. Most recently, a few years ago, they were sold for $280,000. So he was a clever guy. It was a very interesting thing he did. The other thing that Manzoni said is he said he'd like to draw a line around the world. And I thought, well, I'll do that. I would like to draw a line around the world. And so I decided what I'd do is I'd wrap the world in a work of art. Okay? And I actually did it. And the way it worked is there's a machine called a fax machine that you used to send images by. I went to, started in Glasgow, and there's a building in Glasgow overlooking the river. And I fed a piece of paper like this into a fax machine, and I started drawing on it. And I dialed it in to South Africa, to Johannesburg. And as it came out of his fax machine, it went over the table and went into a second fax machine that was dialed into Delhi. And so as it traveled over the table, the artist in Johannesburg added his marks to my marks, and then it went to Delhi, and from Delhi they added their marks, and it then went on to Sydney in Australia, and from Sydney, Australia, it then went to New York, and in New York it then went to Porto in Portugal, and then in Portugal it came all the way back to Glasgow, and there's a child at a second fax machine, and she picked up this piece of fax coming out with all the marks on it, and I was still drawing from the other fax machine, going into the other fax machine, and she picked up, this 10-year-old girl, the work of art, and became a human link in a work of art that wrapped the world. Because every connection in between here and South Africa and India and Sydney, Australia, New York and Porto, they were all real connections with wire. They weren't connections by Wi-Fi or anything else. So we literally wrapped the world. And then I took all the pieces of paper all around the world, and I brought them all back here. And here it comes. And when I brought them all back here, it went into the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow. And when it was in the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow, it then became an exhibition, and then they took the exhibition and toured it around Scotland. Okay? And I'll bring it over here so you can see it. And so in the end, there's probably 3 artists in each location, and there's 5 or 6 locations, so there's about 20 artists involved in all these images that came onto it. So that's Wrap the World, and now we come to Wilton Street. So we live in Wilton Street, or near Wilton Street. That's perfect. Maria's up there. So in Wilton Street, we have a lot of people from different places, different countries. And when you go to your class and you look around in your boys' class, you see there's people from all over the place. Where do they come from? Where do you come from?
Czech.
Who else comes from somewhere? Where do you come from?
Well, my dad.
Poland, yeah.
Yeah, same here.
Jack sort of comes from Sri Lanka. Where do you come from, Tom? You're here?
Scotland, and all people come from India.
India, yeah. So lots and lots of people. And so on the streets and around this area, there's people from all over the world. And I really like the idea, the part of the Wrapping the World thing was about bringing people together, bringing people from all over the world together. And I really like the way that happens in the street. And in the street, you have your friends, you have the community, you have people from all over the world. But the one thing that we all got in common is we're all members of humanity. We have created a Wilton Street cocktail. So the final piece of art is you're going to drink it. It's a cocktail. This is then the toast to family, friends, neighbours, community, and all humanity and our home, the earth.